Hello, this is Sarah V, and today I am going to be making said brooch. It is a brooch of my betta fish Maurice, and I was inspired to make Maurice into a brooch as a way to commemorate him once he has passed away, because I woke up last week and thought he was dead, because he had buried himself under a plant. I will be using the way the closet historian does her bug brooches as reference, but I will also be using a combination of embroidery and beading to make this brooch. Maurice is still alive, but I've always wondered what I should do once my betta fish pass away. I have two. I have Maurice and I have Hank. Hank will be 2 in, I think, April. So he's getting quite old, and I have a feeling he was like a year old when I got him. So he is very old, and Maurice is very small. So I don't think he was a year old when I got him, but he hasn't grown much since I've gotten him. That was almost a year ago, because I got him in February. Anyway, let's get to making the fishy brooch. I am just starting things off by drawing out Maurice on paper. I am using the above picture of Maurice for reference along with a picture of my betta Hank because Maurice is at an odd angle in this picture. I can now pin it to the felt and cut it out with a nice margin and baste around it because nothing really shows up well on the felt. I tried to use chalk and it just makes the texture of the felt weird. To get proper gill placement, I ended up cutting where his gills are at and then using that flap and to just baste it in. I chose to do his head with embroidery thread so his features would stand out more versus if I would have chose to do his head with beadwork, because then all of his small little features would have been fighting with the beads. After his face, I am quickly doing his ventral fins in the front. Their purpose is to help the betta fish steer basically, but I've always just called them his danglers. I am using a black sequin for his eye with a small bead on top. It's not solely a black bead, it has some different iridescent colors in it. And I am using small black bugle beads for his lips and gills. Now that his face is done, I can begin to bead his body. I am using a variety of blues to give his scales depth, along with some off-white beads that will match his fins and mimic his gold shimmery scales. I hadn't intended to go nearly a month without uploading, But with Christmas, I had to finish up a bunch of Christmas presents and time just really got away from me. And then I had family visiting and I kind of prioritized them over making videos. And then after Christmas, whenever they were no longer there, I just kind of ended up doing a lot of cross stitch. The cross stitch I'm working on is a betta fish cross stitch, and I just got really wrapped up with it. It's one of those ones where the symbols are printed on it, so it's basically just like paint by number but for cross stitch. I used the lightest blue beads and off-white ones for his belly in the front. Also, all of the beads I used are from Joann along with the sequins. After beading his body, I am now putting his fins on, and I am just using 3 bugle beads so that you can actually see his fins. His fins actually match the rest of his fins, but they're so light that they're quite hard to see in the picture that I'm using. The process of embroidering his flowy fins was really unmotivating. I originally made this brooch the day before I made this one, and then instead of folding the edges over and clipping them, I trimmed the edges and then I decided to put glue on the back for some reason, and then the glue seeped through all the way to the other side and got all over the beads and ruined it. So that was really upsetting. So this is my second attempt at this, and it was really unmotivating to have to redo this part because it wasn't my favorite part at all. It felt like the slowest part of it because it takes the most time, and it was the biggest part too. After the whole glue issue, I ended up reviewing one of the Closet Historian's videos on one of her beetle brooches and saw that she didn't use any glue at all, so I could have completely avoided that if I had just reviewed some instead of getting antsy and just gluing the back. It also overall just kind of helped refresh me on how I should finish the back so that it looks nice and clean. To add some more depth, I added a darker shade of this yellow gold. And then in some areas I used some blue to define the different parts of his fins. After I finished differentiating the fins, I went around the edge with the blue. After finishing the embroidery, I added bugle beads to those fins for some sparkle and dimensionality. I felt very nervous while clipping and stitching the margins, and so I did it off camera and then stitched a piece to make it even. Before putting the rest of the back on, I am adding blue beads around the fin edges so they are easier to see and to make the edges look more even. Now that that last bit of beading is done, I am stitching on some buckram and then sewing the pin down, followed by just putting slits in the felt, laying it over top, and stitching that down as well. Overall, for a first attempt, I think the brooch turned out pretty cute. It's a little hard to distinguish his face, but he's also not very photogenic because his face and his eyes, it's really dark and they're hard to see in real life anyway. So it's kind of hard to translate that into a piece of artwork where you could easily see his features. And I tried to, but I feel like it's still not super clear where most of his facial features are. And I feel like he's a little weirdly proportioned. But other than that, I think he's quite cute, and I'm glad I will have something to remember him whenever he does pass away. If you would like me to do a more detailed version, like a slowed down version, I would be happy to do that whenever I make a brooch of Hank. Let me know if you would like that. That is all. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, and if you'd like to see more sewing content, please subscribe. If you would like to see what I'm up to day to day, I try to post every day on Instagram at Sarah V Sews Vintage. Thank you again for watching, and see you next time.